So I hope everyone here, you were all in attendance yesterday. We had such an empowering and encouraging morning. We heard from, please pardon the noise in the background. I'm sorry about that. We heard from the trailblazers. They recounted their experiences and advice for those pursuing or who are already in the maritime sector. But today is your day to let your voices be heard and to let us hear from you what your thoughts are and what suggestions and recommendations you may have. We saw demonstrated yesterday the following. I think we could sum it up by saying these women, they came, they overcame, and they conquered. So we realize that we all have our experiences and they're both good and challenging. And without facing the challenges, we just will not be able to chart the course forward and help each other to overcome and conquer. So while we ask you to comment on the challenges, we'll also be focusing primarily on the solutions and recommendations. We know that there's still many rivers to cross. There's also no shame in the fact that it is a work in progress because we are seeing changes, but we will choose to challenge. So I'm going to ask Luis to please put up the PowerPoint presentation, which will just be, give you a little overview. Thank you. Yes, so we're looking at women in the maritime domain. My experience is primarily in maritime security, but I'm sure we have a vast array of different careers within the maritime domain, within this group. So we need to hear from you. You can go to the next one, Luis. So I'm just going to give you an idea of how we're going to pursue this. So we're first going to look at the context, why we're here, the things that we're looking at. And then we're going to look at the forum objectives. And we'll go into the subjects for discussions. Challenges facing women in the maritime sector, women as assets in maritime security, as well as other areas of the maritime industry, and careers in the maritime domain, how to attract all genders. And then the conclusion and summary. I'm hoping that since you had an idea what the agenda was, that you have some thoughts on the matter. I'm only here as a facilitator and to share some of my experiences. I have a colleague who I hope is in this room. It's Skeeta McKenzie. She is one of our female port managers, security managers at one of the public ports in Montego Bay, who she too will be participating. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. So let's talk a little about the context. Why is this so important? And why is it such a relevant subject matter? Well, you will agree. The world is changing rapidly. A lot of what were considered traditional roles or careers suited for women are literally disappearing. You might think of people think, you know, your secretarial roles or roles similar to that, because technology is being embraced and companies are focusing more on cost saving, keeping the company viable. And because of this, wherever technology can take the place of a human, they're going in that direction for long-term savings. There is a need for women to pivot in this economy as a result of these changes. We're also seeing growth in the maritime industry, and this is opening new career paths. And Mona Saboda spoke about that in yesterday's session, so I hope that you were able to see that. And then there is an awareness that women are being discriminated against in careers considered traditionally for men. A lot of this is driven by culture, you know, the particular country, or maybe just long-standing discrimination that just has been there. But we also know that there's a change. There is a change in the generation. A lot of the men who may have thought that women were not suited for these jobs are really on their way out, retiring. We have a new set of norms and views. So this is really the time for women to present themselves, to take advantage of this. And there's also a growing need to find ways to overcome the barriers. Some of them are possibly through your recommendations, basically how we approach things. And some of them will have to need intervention from maybe different organizations. And we have to change this negative attitude toward women pursuing careers in the maritime security. How can we do this? All of this we'll be trying to get out of this 45-minute period. Yes, Louise, thanks. So what are the objectives? Well, we want to identify the existing barriers which deter the entrance of women into the sector, and identify the challenge which discourages women from pursuing these careers. Also, identify challenges which stifle the growth of women within the sector and how to overcome them. And of course, some of these issues you will also have to discuss in the other two forums when we switch around. Identify how to improve women's access to the sector by exploring and identifying the special assets that women bring to the maritime sector by virtue of their strengths, and how to recruit more women in our industry. We're also going to explore solutions to encourage more women to enter the sector. And at the end, all the information garnered through your participation will be used to effect change. So we're looking at joint effort. So we're gonna explore these issues under 3 areas: challenges facing women in the sector, how women are assets to the sector, and how to attract more women to pursue careers in the industry. So let's start with the challenges facing women in the sector. So I found 2 quotations. Unfortunately, I cannot find the names necessarily of the persons to attribute them to, but I think it will generate some discussion. I also want to highlight, as you can see from this slide, what the theme of the International Women's Day was around the world: choose to challenge. This is a very powerful theme because it recognizes that we still have challenges, but to have challenges does not mean that we're going to retreat, but we're going to move forward and choose to challenge. And we have seen, and I'm sure among us here are many women who have successfully challenged, overcame, and conquered. So let us look at these 2. You can go back. I'm sorry, Louise. Thank you. Right, I want to talk about these quotations. And you can use that to generate some thought. 1, women need to outperform men to be taken seriously. And the second one, success in the maritime field is much more about using your intellect than your muscles. Thanks, Louise. You can now turn. So it's time to hear from you. So I'd like to know, first of all, to what extent do you agree that there are challenges that are stifling the growth of women? We'd like to hear your experience, what you think is contributing to these challenges, what are some solutions to breaking down these barriers? So, I want to be able to see all the hands. Let me see. Okay, so is there anyone who would like to start us off? Don't be shy.
Hello.
Yes, I am trying to. Hi. Hello. Hi, Jasmine.
Yes, this is Jasmine. I'm trying
Jasmine.
to. I don't know if I can you see me?
I'm seeing you clearly, and whatever I did, I'm only seeing you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lieutenant Bellini from the Belize Coast Guard, and when it comes to these discussion questions, well, from the quotation before, it really resonated with me, especially the second one, when it talked about success in the maritime field is more about using your intellect rather than your muscles. And I really like that. I didn't even know it was a quotation because I've been using that a lot when trying to recruit females to the department that I was in. Before I transferred over to the Coast Guard, I was in the BDF. So it was primarily infantry, very, very, even now, male dominated. And I was the first female maritime officer and the first female to take over the maritime unit at the BDF. And as a result, I was working with a lot of males. When I say a lot of males, I only had one female there apart from myself. And the one female that was there was in the same rank, in the same position for 6 years, I think she told me, like not doing anything because they all had the, I'm not sure if it's the notion they had or they just weren't exposed to females being able to operate in the maritime field. And that's what I kept explaining to them. I was like, our unit is not about the brute, the muscle, infantry, the patrols where we have to lug all those pounds of, sorry if people keep messaging me, those pounds of muscle on you and trek through the jungles. It's a skill. Either you have it or you don't. And that could be regardless of what gender you are. So when we started recruiting people, that was a platform that we used because even the videos, it was just males driving the boat, just males doing everything. And so when we started to recruit females, we started from scratch with the boat handling course where we introduced people from the infantry side. We also invited other NGOs like our Port Authority. We invited police, and I was an instructor. So that was what had them surprised. They're like, I had a lot of questions about, do you know how to drive a boat though, Miss Bellini? And I'm like, I would be able to drive a boat if I'm at this unit, right? And it was more curiosity. So when we started to show them, we had started to get more females doing the courses, and we actually started to get first place persons as females, and they were shocked. They're like, no, because we had our classrooms would be about 16 people. I remember one year we had 3 females and they were first and third. 0, they didn't have any experience per se when it comes to the maritime field. So when they topped the class, they weren't, the classmates weren't saying, oh, they just gave them the grade because the instructor is a female. They were able to see because we had both practical and theoretical side. And that's what started to have a lot more people becoming interested in being in the maritime field. And that's why that second quote really helped. And when it comes to me at that unit, my struggles it was very hard for the first 2 years because nobody knew me. And they've never had a female maritime officer at that spot. So just being able to show them what you can do rather than say, well, I can do it, it really helped. And well, since then I've transferred over to the Coast Guard because I was being restricted to male and riverine, but that wasn't a gender thing. It was just an organizational thing. So now I'm over at the Coast Guard, and it's the same. We're starting to get more females and showing, well, they're joining the Coast Guard because they're starting to see that it's more a skill-based organization rather than what's the word again? Muscles.
Muscles.
Not saying that females aren't muscular or strong, but it's you're not gonna carry a boat, you know, you're gonna know how to drive it. So so the fourth one, when it comes to solution to breaking down these barriers, I think I mentioned it, just showing them, some people learn better by seeing than what you're saying. So you can do a mixture of both. You can tell them, you can show them. I teach a lot of the classes on base. I'm new there. I just transferred there in September, but I volunteered to teach a lot of the classes, skill-based classes rather than just the theoretical ones, so they can see that, you know, we have strong females that are able to do the job and are able to know what they're teaching, and it helps a lot because it actually encourages other females to want to break out of that box that they put themselves in sometimes. So that's just my input.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and congratulations. You seem to have overcome and conquered. So thank you. And in the third part, talking about attracting women to the sector, I'm sure everything will probably come up in your experiences. One of the quotations I found was, "You need to see it to be it." And you have confirmed that. Now, a little of what you just said, Jasmine, came out in the morning session yesterday when one of our distinguished guests spoke of the stereotyping of women. You know, they say women are emotional and irrational. Then there are some misconceptions. We don't want to get dirty. We don't want to go through physically challenging terrain. And that we're not, or the men want to protect us. So when it's time to go through terrain, they want to hold you because they don't think you can manage. Another thing is that women will not turn up if we have family obligations. So therefore, they are more committed, and therefore there's no space. Okay, I see Doris Mcbride. You have the floor. You can unmute. Thank you. And thanks for assisting me by putting it in the chat.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I would just say that these experiences are not unique to the maritime sector.
Sorry, Doris, I'd love you to tell me where you're from and which country and what is your experience.
Sorry. So my name is Doris Mcbride. I currently am a civilian in the U.S. Coast Guard. Mm-hmm. And throughout my career, I will start by saying that I'm fairly recent to the Coast Guard, about 2 years. Prior to that, I worked for the State Department, which is the U.S. Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And earlier in my career there, I was a diplomat, and then I moved into the maritime policy sector. And prior to that, I worked in industry in the field, where I basically turned trees into paper. And I was an engineer. And I can categorically say that those quotes don't just apply to the maritime sector. I think that they apply to women in general in any field. And that's why I think it's important for women not just to talk to people in their field, but to talk to people in other fields, because you realize that the challenges that we as women face are universal. I remember when I was a child, I would listen to my mother. She worked in a nuclear power plant, and a lot of the things that we're talking about now were challenges she had during her career at that time. And one of the things I heard somebody say about women kind of stuck with me, and it was that when it comes to men, the assumption is that they can do it. So if a man makes a mistake, the assumption is, oh, well, you know, he just had a bad day or it was an anomaly. And for women, it's often the opposite. No matter how well they do their job, the assumption that, oh, well, you know, she just got lucky. You know, that was her good day or it was a fluke. So I think one of the great challenges that we have to overcome is just the perception of competence and incompetence being based in gender or race, because those stereotypes are out there. They have persisted for a long time. I think the other thing we have to recognize is that as women, we by ourselves can't change that paradigm. We really do have to have male allies. And sometimes that's by helping men to understand that just like they want good things for their families, we want good things for our families. And frankly, a lot of the changes that have been occurred that were supposed to benefit women benefited men as well. I know that here in the United States, there are a lot of men who now appreciate the opportunity to have family leave when they have children that are born or when they have elderly family members that they need to take care of. So it's really about trying to figure out ways in which everyone can work together and understand that we can all benefit from some of the changes that have come about because of women. And it's always interesting to me sometimes in meetings when something will come about, men will sometimes make fun of it or say they're doing it for women or you know, they're trying to cater to women. But at the end of the day, they will kind of come up and say, yeah, you know, I'm really glad that they made that change. You know, this is going to allow me some more leeway. And finally, I guess I would just say that when it comes to thinking about how to recruit people, I think it has to start young because we have family members. And I think it's interesting that a lot of times we don't necessarily talk to them about what we do, or they don't see that we enjoy our jobs. So one of the things I try to do, for example, is when my sons were in school, their schools have career days, and I always try to make it a point just to go to their career days and say, hey, did you ever think about how the things that you use got here? And just to have those conversations with people to help them understand how important the maritime sector is, and that even if they don't think about it, it underlies everything that they do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I like the fact that we're covering, sometimes our solutions go right into the last one as well, which is attracting women to the sector. We're kind of covering that, and I like that. And I also appreciate that I'm getting messages in the chat to tell me who would like to speak next, because the way I somehow have set this up, I'm not seeing the hand. So Liana James wanted to express herself as well. Liana, you can unmute and go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Liana James, Customs and Excise in Vincent and the Grenadines.
Welcome.
I actually wanted to comment on the first point that we were discussing. But I'll just go into that and then maybe move on to something.
Yes.
Right. So in terms of challenges, one of the challenges that I think as to why persons are not really being attracted to the maritime, to a career in the maritime and the port security sector is the lack of upward mobility in these organizations for women. Because here in St. Vincent, we have at the Coast Guard, the upper echelon of that organization is all male dominated. And the females basically have like those lower positions that you will find. And the same thing at the Maritime Agency here. It's we have never had a female person heading that unit. It's all male. So I think that is like a deterrent. And another issue too is even in schools when you might have career day, you're not really seeing these organizations out there actually trying to attract young adults, whether students at the community college or even the high schools, to try to trying to attract young people to actually maybe consider a career in this sector. So one of the things that can be done maybe is to have that kind of thing from that level, because you have to, and then is to make it, is to find a way to make it attractive, let people know that, okay, these are the different, okay, in this sector, you can actually become an engineer. You can become name all the different posts and different positions that the person can get in these organizations and so forth. Because it doesn't make no sense to go into an organization and 10 years pass and you're still basically at the same position where you joined.
Yes.
While you basically noticing that males are just moving ahead and so forth. And another thing too is another issue that I think that could be stifling the growth of women in that sector. You oftentimes hear that, well, females are being sexually harassed in these because it's a more male. You will find like females are being targeted, and the persons who are in the higher positions, they might actually sometimes make a person so demotivated because the sexual advances and so forth that are being made at females in these sectors, it can actually deter people, deter females from going into these male-dominated fields. So these are things that we could look at. So, but I think one of the major things to actually attract more women to the sector is to start the career drive from back at the high school level and at the community colleges when they have career day. Because you notice sometimes, even at the preschool level, when they have career day at the preschools here in St. Vincent, the only see a person might actually dress or imitate that they want to become where the sector is concerned is it's about captain, right? The captain of a vessel. So you might notice, so even at the preschool level, the only thing that seems attractive is to be the captain of a large ship. So you will find a child will actually dress and imitate that kind of that kind of job. But the other sectors within the other jobs within the sector, you hardly see it being imitated by anybody. So basically, that's my contribution.
Thank you so much. And that was so valuable. And it kind of reiterated what was said earlier by Jasmine Bellini about you have to see it to be it. And you're so right. You know, when you ask children or what are their career choices, they talk about the things they see and know. So the time has come for us to have a lot more visibility from high school, or even earlier, as you said. Sometimes field trips for the younger kids, field trips to areas that they see a maritime person in action. You see them on vessels, and therefore you widen their eyes and their minds to all the possibilities. And we must remember that it will always be that shipping is the #1 way of transporting, of exporting. Therefore, there's no likelihood that it's going to diminish. It will only diminish based on demand. But as long as there's a demand for goods, the cheapest way will always be by sea. So we are anticipating growth. So these are, this is a time for us to start talking to the young women about these different careers. I think it was Jasmine who spoke about even, I think I could sum it up by calling it coaching and mentoring. So if you are a woman in a male-dominated era and you want to attract more women, and the women come into the sector and you want to help them to rise above these challenges, we also want to think about coaching and mentoring. And that will help them as well to cope. Now, remember, if you'd like to say anything else, I'd love if you drop it in the chat, as I'm not able to see all the hands. I'd like us to talk about women as assets. I think that's the only area we have not really spoken in a lot of detail. Luis, I'm going to ask you to go back one for me, please. Okay, thanks. No, in the other direction, back. Thank you. Now here are two more quotations. And as you notice, I want you to keep in mind the theme for this year's International Women's Day: choose to challenge, not to retreat, not to be discouraged by what may seem like small steps, because we will get there. This quotation: if we want our society to flourish, we need to engage all of its talents, all of its human resources at all levels. We're going to let that sink in a bit. And the next one: women are the other half of society. And without them, like everything else, Maritime will also be incomplete. I do recall, yes, in the session yesterday, one of those distinguished women spoke about, I think, I can't remember who it was, unfortunately, but it had to do maybe with search and rescue operations, or operations that you'd end up probably finding refugees, a lot of women and children. And she mentioned the fact that women handle these matters so much better. And we can think of a host of reasons why women would be better at different things. For example, I can tell you my experience in maritime security. And it would bring me to another point that was mentioned yesterday, which is that there is not a lot of, they don't understand or honor or appreciate any non-maritime skill or experience that you may have. So if you try to apply for a particular job and it does not have a history of your being in the maritime area, then it is discounted. And I must tell you from my personal experience, that was not the case with my organization, because I had absolutely no maritime security experience, but I had a lot of experience in management. And when I came into this job, which was at the start of the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code implementation, one of the strongest assets that was needed at the time was organization and management of the process. And because of that, I was able to lead the charge after a few years of the growth in this part of our program, as well as, and I think that that was truly an asset. Another asset I can identify with women in the maritime security area is our attention to detail, which augurs well in any security career. We're very observant. We're also very good at organization. And having thrown these thoughts out, I would like to get your thoughts on that matter. You can turn now for me, Luis. I think we have about 5 more minutes, and I'd love your participation in this area. What assets do you identify that make women suited for a maritime security career or the sector in general? How can you use these to market and open the way for more women to be employed, and how we can increase advocacy for the recruitment of women in the industry, focusing on assets? Is there anyone who would like to add to what I've already said on the matter? And if you'd like, I'd appreciate. And that's Stacey Kirkhoff. I hope I have the pronunciation. You can unmute and go right ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacey Kirkhoff. I actually presented yesterday.
Yes, Stacey, you were fantastic. Thank you so much, so much. I'm sure you've heard me quote a few things that you said yesterday.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much.
I'm just so sorry I didn't make a specific note of who said what, but it was so inspiring. And it was. Thank you so much for being here to share some more. And I'm looking forward to your thoughts on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm here representing Transport Canada, from Canada, of course, in the marine security domain. And so to carry on with what you said, and I agree with everything I've heard so far, I have a number of women that do report to me in my group. And one of the great assets I find is their ability to negotiate and to dispel conflict. So when they're in the field and conflict does arise, they innately have an ability, and I'm sure it comes from women's history throughout working in the home and how we've evolved into the workforce. We've developed those skills to be able to dispel that conflict and keep cooler heads. And it's always an asset to have women in those roles, especially when I know something will be contentious, to have them go out and have them dispel that. That's a huge thing. You mentioned the observations, and we frequently joke in our group that we're trained observers. Women are very, very observant. And in our field, being able to watch 6 different things at a time and pick out what's happening is a huge skill.
Yes.
So these 2 skills alone, I find, really do predispose women to be very, very good at our job. So when we do recruitment and we go out and focus on who we're trying to attract, really highlighting those skills so that women can see themselves in the role, I think is so important. Being able to go out and say, this is what we're looking for, and this is what we want, so that people can visualize themselves. It makes such a difference. And I do want to just touch on one of the earlier speakers today who said, you know, we can't do this alone as women. We build each other up and we mentor each other, and it's fantastic, but we also do need those male allies to help us. And so also reaching out to the men in the field as mentors and as allies to help promote that is also so important. And I'll give up the mic at that point for others' thoughts.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Those were truly invaluable thoughts. They were, I mean, it just means so much to us to hear you reiterate some of the things that you said yesterday. And I really appreciate the part adding to the negotiating and the dispelling of conflicts and multitasking. I like the fact that your recruitment process highlights those skills. And I must also reiterate, male allies, so important. I've heard so many experiences of women and their growth is directly linked to a supportive male boss. I mean, and therefore, and then there are those who have had to overcome the male stereotyping, and then they do not move unless, of course, there are policies that present themselves in your country that insist on women being a particular percentage in this industry. But it is so very important, and we can reach out to our male allies and show them what we have to offer, because they too would understand the value we bring. I have a comment in here from Doris Mcbride that women are often the underdog. So as a result, we must often be creative and empathetic. We see things that men as a majority have the luxury of ignoring. Yes. So let me see. I think, is there anybody else who would like to comment on our assets and possibly how we could market, how we can, I guess we covered that. I see no comments in the chat. So, okay, so we're kind of running out of time. So I'm going to go to the final one. Luis, can you turn for me, please? Thank you. So I think we've kind of covered that in the other conversations because it just shows us that everything is linked. But I had mentioned earlier, after Jasmine gave us her experience, her life experience, you need to see it to be it. And we think that is still an opportunity that we have, which is to present to those seeking the career what it looks like to have a woman in the career by showing pictures. I think the IMO has developed a wall. I'm sure they have developed a wall. It's a social media wall where you can actually send in pictures of women who are engaged. Career talks, we are always invited to our schools to have career talks. Use this opportunity. There are videos on the IMO site as well that you can use promoting women in the industry, and we can use pictures. So if we're doing a career talk, ensure that we have a presentation so that the women can see what it looks like, because we're targeting bringing more women into the sector. So use pictures, use videos, they're all available. There are a lot of resources there to promote that. And awareness and opportunities. Awareness and opportunities. So awareness is what we're also talking about, and creating the opportunities, which may be beyond us. The opportunities may have to be created through policy and the joint effort, you know, maybe within the universities that offer these courses, ensuring that there's a certain percentage there for women. And there's another thought, something that was shared with me, is a changing of certain policies to attract women. For example, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to be a pilot, a sea pilot, you may have to amend things like to accommodate maternity leave, because it has been a male-dominated career. In certain countries, there's no allowance for that. You get paid as you work. So we have to look to see what are the implications, what are the things, the policies and the changes, and now is the time for us to start doing that. I have here in this room my colleague, Stacey Kirkhoff. She is the PFSO and the security manager for one of our public ports. And Skeeter, I'd like you to unmute and tell us, what would you like to share about your experience? We are in an environment here in Jamaica that is not really hostile to women generally, but we have opportunities to grow. We have had women moving up in the sector. And Skeeter is an example. Skeeter, is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Skeeter McKenzie. I'm with the Port Authority of Jamaica. And I have been, I'm just two months shy of my 16th year with the Port Authority and in the security department in the maritime industry. And I too have had many opportunities to grow. And I can also share that I experience a lot of the misogyny that some persons may have spoken about. And I can encourage that this is something that we can use as an opportunity. I like to prove people wrong. So the things that they think that we can't do, I think that we have to, and it's something that we can all acknowledge and accept. I think that we have to work a little bit harder at showing that we can do this and we can accomplish this. And I'm happy that the Port Authority has provided me with this opportunity, because I started out with absolutely no maritime experience. Started out in security surveillance. I grew into screening, where we scan cargo, import and export for anything that is illegal. And I've grown through all of the stages to the point where I can guide my persons under my stewardship with the knowledge that I have worked in your area. I can give you support here. So I am happy for that experience that the Port Authority has allowed. And one of the things that I really want to encourage women to do is to make yourself an asset. Even though you may not see the opportunity as yet, you create in yourself this go-to person, so that when the opportunity comes, you will be the person that they can't ignore. You are front in line, and to go around you is to their own detriment. You make yourself present. And that's one of the things that I like, and that's one of the things that is encouraged. And I do have male allies, as Audrey mentioned. We can't go this journey without them. And I think sometimes they believe that we want to replace them, but we also have to make them know that we want to work with them, because it's not possible for us to go it alone, but we want to go as your equal counterpart. And the empathy that we bring to the job is also helpful, because I work with a lot of security officers, and we find that a lot more female security officers are in the employ of the contractors now. Sometimes you see someone that they're not performing at the level that you expect them to be at. You just want to take that person aside, and you realize that I'm not getting enough hours to cover my rent. I have to send the children off to stay with an auntie. This officer now cannot function. But you, as a female manager, you can understand where they are. You can implement a strategy wherein the workload is equally shared, so this officer can get more hours so that she can be more focused. So it's not just that this person is not performing, so I throw them out. What else could be the underlying factor why this person is not performing? And that's one of the assets I think women bring to the field. And we can look beyond just the situation at hand and unravel the underlying factors. And when you get persons to see that you are looking at them as not just a person that you want to extract work from, this is an asset to your team. Persons you find work much better when they realize that you see them as more than just 12 hours of work.
Thank you so much, Skeeter. Thank you so much. And Skeeter is speaking from a point of experience. And may I add, she has a family. And which shows that women can function in these careers and have a family and still do what is expected of them. Well, we're going to end our session now, but I have to just comment some of the messages that have been coming in from Lieutenant Commander Shelley-Ann and Miss Marshall. Breaking the barriers are essential, such as a discussion on sexual harassment, gender sensitization. In the field, it's very important to build leadership and confidence. And you may get an opportunity to discuss that a little more in other roundtable discussions. Doris Mcbride, women don't do that. You're the first or the only. That may be true, but oftentimes there are others who went before but weren't acknowledged. And finally, we hear from Stacey Kirkhoff. I relate so much to those who have said they entered this field with no previous maritime experience. That was my path as well, and a barrier I personally had to break through. This was a long-held misconception that to do our job successfully, you must have previous maritime experience. Women are more likely to enter our field without the previous experience than men. However, in my experience, they're equally capable and skilled at doing the job and learning the environment. Ladies, I have just deprived you of 10 minutes of your break time, but this was such a robust discussion that we're going to end it here. And you have 5 minutes and then you go to your next session, and that's Liz calling me.
Audrey, can we take a picture, please? Can you take the PowerPoint presentation off so I can take a picture of the whole team, please?
Sure, they're going to take a picture of this.
Thank you. Can you please put your cameras on so I can take a picture?
Yeah, man. All right, good. Good.
That would be great if you can put your cameras on for a quick picture before we go to break. That would be amazing. Thank you. Is anyone else taking their cameras? Thank you. Thank you. Let's wait. I want 1 more second. Okay, I think 1, 2, and 3. I'll take another one. Smile. Thank you. Let me take another one, please. There's a second there. Thank you so much. You feel free to go to your break, and thank you so much for such a wonderful roundtable discussion.
Yes, and thank you all for your participation, especially those who wrote in the chat and those who braved the cameras and came forward. Thank you, and enjoy your other roundtable discussions. See you at the end.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I am gonna conduct the session in the English language, but we do have simultaneous translation. I see that you all have your cameras off, but I would hope that maybe you have the courage to turn them on, or at least do it when the discussion part of the forum takes place, so that we can see your faces when you address the rest of us. Welcome again to this session on diversity and inclusion in the context of the virtual roundtable on women in the maritime and security sector. I prepared, actually, let me go back. Wait, give me a second. How do I get out of here? Shoot. Give me a second that I prepare this. So what I did is I prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you to get us started with the concepts, as well as some of the advice based on my own experience dealing with issues of diversity and inclusion for the region, working with member states, as well as in leading the teams that I lead. And the idea is that I will do this, I'm gonna time myself so I don't overdo it in terms of time. And then I wanna, we all, you know, the idea is that the learning also happens when we hear each other's stories and we hear each other in terms of strategies that we have implemented with, you know, in dealing with challenges at work and carving and strengthening our own leadership path, right? And which is a very personal one. So for that, I wanted to just share with you, start with concepts, very briefly review how we understand inequality and inclusion at the OAS, and really this is translatable to not just at the regional level, but also to the microcosm of a professional environment. I want to talk about cement ceilings or impostor syndrome, as it has been called, as well as glass ceilings that women face. And then we're gonna go very quickly through some of the manifestations of the resistance to women's leadership in professional environments. I'm gonna refer to the domination techniques by Berit As, a Nordic sociologist that mapped out exactly how these resistances to women's leadership manifest, what strategies we could think of. I'm gonna refer very quickly an article that I wrote for a platform called Apolitical. It's a platform dedicated to supporting people in the public sector. And finally, just very quickly review some of the things that I have applied to myself in ensuring diversity and inclusion in the teams that I lead. And, you know, there's very concrete things as, you know, composing teams in reflecting the human diversity and using other very concrete things that can help this agenda. I think it's crucial, and I'm gonna leave this PowerPoint presentation to all of you. It's crucial to understand that we all, you know, the region continues to be one of the most unequal in the world. And the way we understand inequality is not just based in terms of distribution of income or opportunities, but also on very concrete characteristics of human beings that unfortunately generate discrimination, generate exclusion, and generate resistance to their contributions and their leadership. And what we refer to really is an asymmetry or disparity in the distribution of resources, services, privileges, responsibilities, prestige, and something that as women we need to feel comfortable with, which is power. No, inequality is asymmetry in the exercise, in the access to power, and there's various categories of of groups that face structural inequalities, and these include, our Inter-American Instruments of Human Rights already map out those race, and I'm going to refer to them very soon, race, age, but one of them, of course, is men and women, and how women face additional inequalities in the exercise of their leadership and in really all realms of human rights. What the way we define inclusion is as a process. Is the process that allows us to close those gaps, to close those disparities, and that facilitate all people accessing their rights and facilitate all people having access to resources, power, privileges, responsibilities, everything that I have been mentioning. Ultimately, it's about improving the way people participate in society at the more the very individual level, but also at the macro level, and also ensuring their dignity. And this is a word that in the previous session with the other group came out a lot, how to ensure that we as women in the professional sector preserve and operate to protect our dignity in the way we interact with others. The concept of inequality and social exclusion can be explained by various factors. Of course, in this virtual roundtable, we are addressing the issue of women that we as women face in the professional public sector. But of course, there's other identities that coexist within us that have to do with race, disability, age, where we live, opportunities we've had, what religion we have, that together tend to generate situations of exclusion or discrimination, or let's just say resistance to us reaching higher levels within the hierarchies that we work on. I want to talk about two ceilings that we as women in the public sector face. One is what the analogy of the glass ceiling, right? It is mostly being used for the economic sector in terms of salary disparities between men and women. But the glass ceiling is also an analogy used to group all the obstacles and resistances that women face in reaching leadership positions that you cannot touch. I mean, that's why they use the analogy of the glass ceiling, because it's transparent. They're everywhere, but you cannot really point out to them, but unfortunately end up preventing women from reaching positions of power. So that's one of the ceilings that we face that I wanted to bring to this conversation. And we want to hear what type of manifestations of these glass ceilings you've faced and how you have addressed them. But there's another one that I, with other colleagues, have called cement ceilings, or Sheryl Sandberg in the book Lean In, the former CEO of Facebook, has called the Impostor Syndrome, which have to do with our own self-perceptions of the moment in which we're ready to assume a greater responsibility, we're ready to step out to the next ladder in the hierarchy within the organizations that we work on, and how we tend to doubt ourselves in terms of this, reaching these greater levels. I always say that leadership is a very personal path, and only us, only I know what I'm ready to do to move to the next step. But a lot of those factors that play out in making those decisions have to do with this imposter syndrome, which result really due to socialization processes that we face as women that kind of like make us uncomfortable in terms of moving quickly or as quickly as our male peers in these hierarchies. How do these resistances to diversity, to inclusion in the workplace manifest? And I'm gonna refer to examples that are very, very concrete that I have personally experienced, and that really relate to what these sociologists mapped out for women in politics in the Nordic countries. So, this is something that tends to happen no matter the cultural environment that we are in, but manifest themselves in situations such as making you or the contributions you have to make invisible. The most concrete ways that this happens are via mansplaining, man-interrupting and bro-creating. And just to tell you, I mean, I think they're self-explanatory, and you probably have faced them, these situations, but refer to, for instance, when you're in a meeting and you contribute something and you have a male colleague repeat it, and then everybody credits the contribution to the male colleague, or when you are speaking and your male colleague feels comfortable in interrupting what you have to say, or mansplaining, which is explaining something that you evidently know in a condescending manner. Another technique mapped out by sociologists as is the ridiculing or making jokes, especially to women, you know, jokes that are sexist. It happens also in terms of racist jokes for those who represent other races. And once they are made and you don't react positively, then, you know, they call you, oh, you know, you have a thin skin, you know, you can't take a joke. And these are ways to also neutralize you and the way you interact with the rest of the team. A very one that is super often is used is the withholding of information. For you to do your work, you need information, and sometimes a way to neutralize you raising up in the ranks is to withhold information so you cannot do your job. Double binding is another very concrete technique used to neutralize women's leadership, and that really refers to no matter what course of action you take, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're proposing too many things, oh my God, she's intense, she's too proactive, and if you don't do enough, then oh, what a passive member of the team. And this again tends to happen, and I've seen it and experienced it. Another one is the setting of traps, and this mostly relate to the changing of assignments or doing assigning extra work, like overload of work that is not even in your job description, with the intention for you to make a mistake. Blaming, again, that at some point you always are the one to blame for things that don't go as right, instead of really finding solutions. And at some point, I mean, I've seen situations where the person even doubts herself, you know, maybe I am the one to blame. It hasn't happened to me because I really try to document everything, but these are things that definitely happen in the workplace to women. And then one that she documents is the use of more violent ways, insults and situations that minimize women's contribution, even their own integrity. How do you deal with these situations? What strategies we can think of to address them? I just want to share very quickly that in one of my COVID-19 projects has been writing this book it's in Spanish. It's called Success in Capsules, 5 Keys to Restart or Start Your Career. Is really for young people or people wanting to revamp their career paths. And I share some of the techniques that have worked for me in addressing these type of situations, and that really have allowed me to assume a leadership position in the organization where I work. I share them very quickly with you. I refer to these cement ceilings, and the impostor syndrome is something that all people, really women and men, face. But because of very particular socialization processes, women tend to face more than men. And it's something that we as leaders, women leaders, have to keep working on. And, you know, there's ways that we can discuss how to do this, but the point is that the pathway has to be towards empowering ourselves every day a little bit more. Number 2, mapping actors, you know, knowing who can be an ally, who is a detractor, what is going on in relationships within responsibilities within the office, where are, you know, and so that would help you think of incentives to ensure that this ecosystem of actors can work on your behalf. Number 3, the use of the amplification technique. And this actually was a technique used by women in Obama's in the Obama administration, really in the White House, because the women in the Obama team felt that in some of the meetings, the mansplaining and especially the bro-creating was happening, no? When male colleagues were taking their ideas as their own. So they decided to, outside of those meetings, organize themselves so that male and female colleagues that were part of this agenda of giving voice to those who didn't have it would help give credit to the one that proposed the contribution in the meetings. I mean, these are just some of the ideas that you could think of in terms of strategies to combat these resistances. They need to work on networking in your own organization, again, with the idea of finding allies. If you have a sponsor, if you have someone to advocate for you, to throw in your name, to propose your profile when projects or missions are being discussed, this is another very good way to combat this resistance. Again, I always say you have to network and find sponsors the humane and smart way, not because there's something that you can take from this person, but because you see that person as a reference, and you can get, obviously, some support from that person, but you also add value to that person. It has to be a win-win situation. If these situations happen to you or to other members of your team, another strategy definitely has to be calling it for what it is. No, don't let this thing, don't be passive in these situations, because this also will portray you as an assertive member and leader of the team. And then, of course, documenting them for the long run. I just referred to you an article that I published in this portal that I mentioned for public sector employees and leaders. It's called Apolitical, and I'm not gonna go over the 7 things that I wish someone would have told me when I was entering the public sector and I was getting to leadership positions within the organization that I work on, because I somehow have already mentioned them, but and I'm not gonna repeat them, but I would definitely mention 2 more. One is to learn to use symbolism. Again, for some reason, women are less comfortable with power, with the war power, and even have to pay higher costs for showing that they're ambitious. And I don't see anything wrong with being ambitious in the topics and field that is your passion and that you really want to contribute. Unfortunately, women tend to pay a higher cost. And one of the ways to combat this is using symbolism when having difficult conversations. You have to be careful in the place you use to have the conversation in positive and negative ways, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then the other thing that I would add that really I wish someone would have told me is how or the strategic use of social media to share the work that you're doing in the field that you work on and that you have a mandate to do. If your organization allows it, the use of social media like Twitter, for instance, in the OAS, Twitter is very relevant, has really transformed qualitatively how we are projecting the work that we do. In the past, the work was still happening, but we were not really showing it. And I think this could definitely be an advantage to women. I always say that it's the great equalizer. Social media is a great equalizer for women in the public sector. I close very quickly with some of the recommendations that I use for myself. I really believe we all have to be examples of diversity and inclusion, and we have to be examples of how this is mainstreamed in the way we do our work and we put together our teams. Watch or pay attention to the language you use. Try to use inclusive language, because language is power. It can either break or perpetuate unequal relationships of power. Always have people at the center is the second recommendation. Try to compose diverse groups that really reflect the human diversity. 4, try to normalize the presence of women in your teams. You can think of a 30% critical mass, as it has been called. Ideally, parity in the composition of the teams that you put together, 50-50, and also incorporate their vision, because they have a different way to look at the same things or the same problems that we need to solve. Unlearn stereotypes and biases that all of us have, both women and men. Think of how to create solutions in a co-creation type of approach. And then the last 2 that I would say, I really believe the leadership that is more powerful is the leadership that is accessible, that is not simple, but down to earth, and that really seeks to connect with those who we lead and those who we serve, not those that are over there in the pedestal. I really believe that the 2021 and what's going to come after the pandemic is really going to require leadership that is accessible. And then finally, especially when it comes to diversity in terms of minorities and groups that have historically been excluded, try to not overdo it, because that can also be seen as a form of discrimination. And here I'm referring to people with disabilities, for instance, and other groups, that when you overdo this, the idea of inclusion, it is felt by these groups as a form of discrimination. What they expect, these groups, is to be treated as the same terms as the rest of the members of your teams and of the members of the people that you serve. I will leave it at that. I am sharing my social media here in case we can stay connected that way. Twitter at Betica Munoz Pogo, and then Instagram at Betica Munoz, no Ñ in English. And now I will stop and I will open the floor for you all to share, you know, how you are approaching diversity and inclusion in your own workplaces. How you know, what are some of the resistances that you faced in your work in these situations? Yes, I can do that again. And really how you have overcome them, because I really think, you know, we can take notes from each other in terms of what has worked and what hasn't worked in addressing diversity and inclusion and addressing the challenges that we face as women leaders in the workplace. Yes, Karen, I'm sharing my social media again, and I would, if I have someone from the SICTE team, help me find who's asking for the floor. I invite you to either open up your camera and mic to make your contribution, or raise your hand. Use the icon in the Zoom platform at the bottom. There's an icon to request the floor. Okay, I see that nobody has raised their hand yet, but I want to have a courageous soul to open their mic and
okay.
Doris, thank you so much. Please go ahead.
I will be bold and courageous. Hi, how are you?
Excellent. That's what I love.
Thank you very much. I thought your presentation was very useful and important. And I guess I would say that one of the things that I have learned during my career is that fair and equal are not the same thing. And that's why they're two different words. And I think a lot of times, you know, people say, well, you should treat everybody exactly the same. But if you do treat everybody the same, that's not necessarily being fair to everyone, because of whatever work skills they might have or how they conduct themselves. I think that one of the things that has to be balanced is treating the members of the team not the way I necessarily want to be treated, but in the way they need to be treated to help them to be the best that they can, and also so that how they are treated in relation to their colleagues, I don't want to say is equal, because it's not equal, but it is in such a way that everybody understands why people are treated the way they are. Over.
Excellent reflection, Doris. This is really true. I mean, we talk at the OAS about the concept of equality and the concept of equity. And there are two different things, right? As you are saying, treating everyone the same implies that we're all by condition the same, and we are not. The point is that operating of course, we should be equal before the law in terms of rights and in terms of obligations. However, we need to operate with the principle of equity in the sense that we all have not have the same conditions to, I don't know, access to education or opportunities for jobs, and you know, this whole dichotomy of men and women and how we experience the world is different. And when we are developing solutions in the realms of work that we all have, when we are managing a team, we need to be conscious of those differences. And operating with the principle of equity means leveling the playing field so that everyone can contribute and have the same opportunities and rise up in the ranks accounting for those differences in conditions and environment. So that's a very important point of reflection that I will definitely bring to the plenary when we all meet back after these sessions. I want to invite someone else to be another courageous soul and share their perspective and specifically what you are facing in your work environments. And again, I want to perhaps focus on how to keep rising in the hierarchy, exerting your leadership, not for the sake of exerting leadership really, or just for the sake of power, but really because you feel that you have solutions to bring to the table and you want to work on an agenda that is interesting to you and that is your passion and that motivates you to keep learning and developing. Skeeter, please take the floor.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So my name is Skeeter McKenzie. I'm with the Port Authority of Jamaica, and I'm currently the security manager and the port facility security officer at the Port of Montego Bay. So I could really identify with some of the points you made with regards to how sometimes women are discriminated against. And one of the things that stood out for me was the information sharing and how sometimes you don't get the information that you need to act on. And there are times when I identified as a deliberate strategy. As of course, it's a male-dominated
strategy, definitely.
Yes. And there are times when I interpret it as not wanting to insult your fellow male colleague. So we can sacrifice the female, but we have to stick together. So one of the things that I really do look at in terms of dealing with that is just putting the protocols in place to make sure that you are included and that you get to make the final decision if it is something that you will be held accountable for. So when we are working with male colleagues, some of who report directly to us, we also have to give them some amount of autonomy because it makes them feel appreciated and respected. And we can't, because we are in charge of them, just implement a heavy-handed approach. We also, I find, have to utilize them in a way that they can help us as well to further our objectives. And this is the alliance forming of critical allies that we spoke about in another session. So it's just about, for me, I identify what's happening, but I have to put a strategy in place that says, when something comes to your attention for a decision from the security department, it should be the same decision that I would make if I am here and if the matter comes to me. If you do something otherwise and there is a backlash or something happens adversely, then I can't then say that this is my position on the matter because you went off on a frolic of your own. So my responsibility to them is to let them know where our position is as a department. So if the matter comes to your attention, this is what should happen. So when you direct that problem to me, this is the kind of feedback you can anticipate that you would get from me. So when persons will try to circumvent my office because maybe I'm too detailed, I'm going to ask you for an email so I can do follow-up. Even if you go around my office and try another route, you should end up with the same feedback. So I don't have to force them to come to me. But what I do is I coach my staff so that we can be in concert and give the same feedback regardless of who they come to in the security department. So I think that's one of the ways that I have found that works for me. And I think, if it's something that could work for others, depending on what they do, then they could try that strategy.
Excellent contribution, Skeeter. I really think this idea of creating processes, creating even manuals so that they know exactly where you are positioned and what you're willing to back in terms of the decisions they make autonomously is really the way, is an excellent way to go. I actually think not just male peers that you supervise, but the leadership that we need in the future of government has to be one where, and in general, really, is the leadership that gives autonomy to those in the team to think for themselves, of course, with guidance and coaching.
Right.
But people feel much more stimulated to be part of your team when they have that level of autonomy.
Yes, absolutely.
And then on the issue of withholding information, it happens. I mean, they don't CC you in the email that you really need to make a decision on something else. Mm-hmm. Or there is a meeting that happens and then they say, oh, I am sorry, I forgot to invite you. Yes. Sometimes you can tell whether it's a genuine mistake, but in the case of women, it tends to be part of the dynamic. And sometimes it's just really, they didn't even think of it. They did not, I mean, you were not in the radar. So I believe also the best way to address this situation is to have the difficult conversations.
Right.
And there's a method to them that includes pointing out the fact, I was not CC'd in this email and I needed this information to be able to resolve this other problem and look at all the consequences that not having that information in the email had. Sharing what you feel about it, sharing your feelings. However, in that same moment, distancing yourself from feelings because this is not productive to concrete solutions.
Right.
Then saying your opinions about that fact, that actual thing that happened and really what it means for the organization, and then really directly and assertively propose solutions. And the best way for me, I think it could be to prevent us from doing that, is to create a listserv that anything that has to do with these 3 topics, we are all always copied and nobody is excluded. Right. Not just me, anyone else. So this is what I propose. Yes, and then I propose, and then the last part of that method is really saying what you will do or what you will give up or what you would kind of assume in terms of the solution to the situation. I don't know, it could be, and I propose myself to put together that list that we can analyze as a team, and then that's it. Once we settle on that list, everybody has to be copied.
Right.
And, trying to practice that method to ensure that we are not excluded from the information that we need.
One of the things that we just can't take for granted is that the status quo is going to be of such that it's what we expect. Sometimes we really do have to work on putting these systems in place because it may not be the way that you think it should be from day one. So the proposals that you made just now, the recommendations that you made just now, they take some time at times to implement. But sure. I really do understand that that's exactly really what is needed.
Mm-hmm. It's really also a change of organizational culture.
Yes.
In a way. So very excellent points. Thank you so much, Skeeter, for that sharing. Okay. Anyone else wants to contribute? Another courageous soul to share their perspective and anecdotes or experiences that you've had in the workplace in dealing with these situations. This is the moment. Anyone found that they've used the amplification technique, for instance, or have experienced the mansplaining or interrupting that sometimes happens? No one? Well, we are a few minutes from the time that the second forum is supposed to end. So I start. Audrey, please go ahead.
You're in mute, Ms. McNeil.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, I was just saying that in my experience, when I entered the maritime field, just when the ISPS code was introduced, I had to audit and advise men who were in the security field for many years. I didn't get a lot of resistance from the majority, but I do recall 2 experiences that I had with men that were from a traditional, they were from the Army, who were now functioning as PFSOs. And what I found, I was ignored or I was challenged, just two. Or they would have these conversations around me that I found to be just so inappropriate. But what I found worked, I just did not react. For the one who was doing that, having that conversation, I just did not react. I sat there, I allowed them to finish, and then we got on to the business at hand. And then I kept that professional behavior through my interaction with both. And over time, I got challenges, but I had a committee that would back my recommendations. And I think by just sticking to your principles, by performing, by doing what you're supposed to do in a very professional manner, you eventually sometimes can win over those who thought that you were just not up to the job, or you were not, you could not tell them about things they know about and you didn't know about. So I didn't overreact. Neither did I use my power in an overt way, because working with the designated authority, you do have the option to use all the tools. It could be, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, you recommend that they be, their certification be suspended. No. So I find that when we meet up on these sort of situations, we just have to prove our competence. Just remain calm, continue to be insistent. Don't allow them to push you over. And especially if you're backed up by policy or legislation, you just kindly explain, show, just be your professional self. That was my experience when I first started to work in the sector. What I think possibly saved me was the fact that it was new to most people. So although they thought I was still looking like an expert to others who just had absolutely no history. So we kind of came level playing field, but I still found that I had these experiences. So I think that we just have to stand our ground, continue to be professional, try not to overreact, and know that eventually, because these two particular PFSOs became allies of mine over a period of time. Yes. So we just have to use the tools we have, if it is legislation, to show, to explain, and just continue to be very knowledgeable in your subject matter. I really believe that when we show our competence, we show that no matter what they come with, we have the answers. I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of background research so that I was prepared. So I think if we continue to do that, be knowledgeable, do your research, continue to educate yourself so that when you're faced with this sort of resistance, that you can speak from a point of knowledge and just be calm, don't overreact, and in time, they will come to respect you. That is my little 2 cents from my experience.
Excellent 2 cents. Thank you so much, Audrey, for joining this conversation and sharing that perspective, a very, very important perspective. And I actually feel like, I identify, because I have had to also interact with in a very masculine environment, and the best way to assert myself has been, the knowledge I have, how I keep up with the knowledge on the topics that I have a mandate for and that I'm responsible for, and developing myself and always maybe, as even was it Skeeter who said, talking about, or no, was it, I can't remember, processes, legislation. I mean, let's not talk sentiments. Let's talk facts and what is the mandate that we have here to do, and that's the best way to combat the resistances that you are describing, Audrey.
And may I add, Batilde, that it's always good to understand where our male counterparts are coming. Just understand them, and they know why they behave that way. And with that knowledge, you're a step ahead. Because sometimes it's not that they don't know, but it might be issues of ego or different things. So the way we handle it will have a lot to do with the respect that we get from them. We don't have to be aggressive. It's not necessary for us to be aggressive and unkind. It's just not necessary. We can calmly communicate, because we know it's not personal. It may be affected by culture, limited beliefs and misconceptions. But once we demonstrate that we're up to this, we know what we're talking about, I think, with the exception of those that it is really deeply ingrained and we may not be able to deal with that, those who may be influenced by the beliefs of others may eventually come around. And we also have to respect that they too have their issues, their feelings. So we want to be respectful of that. And at the same time, we make it clear, I'm an expert here. I'm not trying to show you up. You know, this is, especially where in my area, I always let them know we're here to help. This is a team effort. Being ISPS certified is not me here to point things out and to get you in trouble. It's us working together for a common good. We're a team. I find that this approach works when the majority of security managers that I have to interact with are men. And by letting them know, and always remembering that they too need to hear, good job. You know, you're doing an excellent job as well. Because so sometimes we have to use a little psychology.
Yeah.
To get beyond some of those barriers, because we're all working for a common good. That is where it works. It possibly doesn't always work, but it's worth a try.
Absolutely. And what I really want to take away on this, what you are saying of the way we react and how we need to be professional above else, and not to, you know, the unkind or the intense or the overly bossy, because then we feed stereotypes about women that, you know, all the contrary. What we want is to combat those stereotypes and for people to see us for our contributions and the professional contributions that we want to do to solve a problem in whatever field we're in. So that's very, very important. Okay, so aquí, a ver. They are asking me, the organizers, for to request from all of you to turn your cameras on so they can take a picture for the record and for the report. So if you would be so kind to turn your cameras on so Daniela can take a picture of this group, that would be great. Daniela, you let us know when.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah, they're turning their cameras on. Thank you so much. I'll start. Okay. I'm waiting. People are turning their cameras on still. Thank you. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Let me take another one because we have 2 groups. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniela, for the picture. And I want to thank everyone for their comments, for their attention, for the conversation that we had. Audrey, thanks again to you. Awesome contributions. Thank you so much for joining this forum. And we will end here, and I will see you all in the next, in the plenary that we're gonna have right after the next workshop, okay? So goodbye, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you, Betilde.
Primero las saludo, estoy encantada de estar en este espacio con ustedes y lo primero que voy a hacer es compartir una presentación. Mi presentación es en español, no sé si están ya familiarizadas con el botón de la traducción. Si alguien me lo puede confirmar,
sí,
por favor.
Sí, una vez que le dan al botón que es un mundo, que dice Interpretation, ahí pueden escoger el idioma.
Ok, ¿ellas ya lo saben a eso?
They should, yeah, they know that once you click on the interpretation icon down below on the right, you can choose your language.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. Because this presentation will be in Spanish, but the questions we will be speaking in English. So first, I would like to share with all of you a presentation. Well, it's not, okay. Are you seeing it correctly? ¿Se ve
sí,
la presentación?
perfecto.
Se ve bien, perfecto. Bien. La idea es primero compartirles algunas herramientas para el fortalecimiento de los liderazgos de las mujeres y que luego podamos abrir un espacio de intercambio y de preguntas. Pero antes de compartirles las herramientas para el fortalecimiento de los liderazgos de las mujeres, me gustaría contarles una historia, que es una historia real, de algo que me sucedió hace muchos años, que es que cuando empecé a estudiar en la universidad, mi primer año en la universidad, una vez una profesora ingresó al salón de clase y en la pizarra escribió esta frase. Escribió, López tiene un hermano, pero el hermano de López no tiene un hermano. ¿Por qué? Y la verdad es que los estudiantes que estábamos allí sentados dimos muchísimas respuestas, pero ninguna de las personas que estábamos en la sala de clases dio la respuesta correcta. Y la respuesta correcta es que el hermano de López no tiene un hermano porque tiene una hermana, porque López es mujer. Y yo sé que a muchas de ustedes ahora estarán diciendo, el famoso efecto eureka, ¿no? Claro, porque López era mujer. ¿Y por qué no sucede esto? No sucede esto porque cuando escuchamos apellidos, Smith, López, Rodríguez, Wilson, en realidad la primera representación que se nos viene a la mente es el rostro de un varón. ¿Por qué? Porque el apellido es lo que utilizamos en el espacio público y tenemos asociado el espacio público con los varones y en cambio el espacio doméstico con los nombres y con lo propio de las mujeres. Por lo tanto, desde el inicio, desde el punto de partida, lo que existe es un muy marcado sesgo automático e inconsciente que asocia a los hombres con el espacio público y a nosotras con las mujeres con el espacio doméstico. Esto no es algo que digo yo, sino que si ustedes quieren participar, inclusive lo pueden hacer porque es gratuito. La Universidad de Harvard tiene un test gratuito que se llama test de asociación implícita, donde ustedes pueden probar si tienen sesgos o no los tienen, y la mayoría de las personas los tienen. Por ejemplo, casi 8 de cada 10 personas asocian más rápido las profesiones y las carreras y los trabajos fuera de casa con las mujeres, y en cambio asocian con los varones, perdón, y asocian rápidamente las tareas domésticas y de cuidado y familiares con las mujeres. Lo que esto significa entonces es que existen ciertos sesgos automáticos que alimentan estereotipos, y un estereotipo que en particular nos perjudica a las mujeres, que son los estereotipos acerca del liderazgo. ¿Y por qué digo que estos estereotipos nos perjudican a las mujeres? Porque el estereotipo predominante que se genera es que cuando pensamos en liderazgo pensamos en varón. Pensamos que el liderazgo es masculino. Ni siquiera lo pensamos, sucede. Si ahora estuviéramos en una sala llena de gente y yo le preguntara al auditorio, les pidiera, cierren los ojos e imaginen una persona liderando, y luego les dijera, ahora alcen la mano quienes imaginaron una mujer, serían muy pocas manos alzadas, porque la realidad es que cuando nos piden que imaginemos a alguien liderando, la primera imagen que a la mayoría de las personas les viene a la mente es la imagen de un varón, porque hemos sido socializados en la idea de que el liderazgo es un rol natural en los varones y no así en cambio para las mujeres. No lo digo solamente yo, lo dicen muchísimos estudios, inclusive la última medición que hizo el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo en una encuesta mundial en el año 2020, nos muestra que aún hoy, en la tercera década del siglo XXI, la mitad de la población del mundo sigue pensando que los hombres son mejores líderes que las mujeres. Lo piensan aún las personas que nunca han tenido la experiencia de estar en un equipo liderado por una mujer, ¿de acuerdo? No es que lo piensan porque tuvieron la experiencia y fue mala. Aún personas que nunca trabajaron con una mujer, que nunca tuvieron una jefa mujer o estuvieron en un equipo liderado por una mujer, creen que el liderazgo, que los hombres van a ejercer mejor el liderazgo que las mujeres. Entonces, lo que estos datos de alguna manera nos indican es que vamos a encontrar esto replicado muchas veces. Por ejemplo, si les preguntamos a las personas que rápidamente piensan en el nombre de alguien que ejerce un cargo ejecutivo, suelen pensar en nombres de varón. Cuando les decimos que piensen en el nombre de alguien que trabaja como asistente, normalmente piensan en un nombre de mujer. Y fíjense que esta tendencia la hemos replicado hasta en la inteligencia artificial. ¿Sí? Nuestras asistentes de inteligencia artificial son voces de mujeres, Alexa, Siri, Cortana. Es verdad que ahora existe la posibilidad, si uno lo desea, de cambiar lo que viene por default, que son voces de mujeres, y tener asistentes hombres. Pero menos del 5% de las personas hace esto, porque las personas se sienten mucho más cómodas con una voz de una asistente mujer, porque así hemos sido socializados, en esta idea de que las mujeres no estamos para liderar, sino para asistir. Esto se replica en todas las áreas de actividad humana, en la ciencia, en la tecnología, en la religión, en la política. No importa dónde ustedes miren, van a encontrar que el liderazgo ha sido ocupado por los varones. ¿Sí? A la Universidad de Oxford le tomó 800 años hasta que en 2015 nombró por primera vez una rectora mujer. Se consideró un super logro que en el año 2018, después de 50 años de existencia, 1 de cada 5 personas de los mayores líderes del mundo que asistieron al Foro Económico de Davos fueran mujeres, 1 de cada 5, y eso se consideró un gran logro. Menos del 5% de los premios Nobel han sido otorgados a mujeres, no porque las mujeres no hayan realizado descubrimientos científicos extraordinarios, sino porque los directores de los departamentos y laboratorios de investigación suelen ser hombres, que hacen lobby con otros hombres y hacen que sus trabajos sean más difundidos o más reconocidos. A la Bolsa de Comercio de Nueva York, a Wall Street, le tomó más de 200 años tener una presidenta mujer. Recientemente, por primera vez, la Bolsa de Comercio de París nombró una presidenta mujer. En estas semanas pasadas, por primera vez, la Organización Mundial del Comercio tiene al frente una mujer, y la NASA, por primera vez, tiene una subdirectora mujer. Estos estereotipos y estos sesgos que están ahí presentes todos los días, también están siendo todos los días reforzados a través de las imágenes que vemos en las redes sociales, en la publicidad y en las noticias. Déjenme darles unos poquitos ejemplos. En el año 2015, para el Día de la Mujer, no sé si ven que ahí abajo hay un hashtag que dice Happy Women's Day. Vic, que es una compañía transnacional, esto lo publicó en Twitter. Esto fue una publicación en Twitter que dice: luce como una niña, actúa como una dama, piensa como un hombre, trabaja como un jefe. Por supuesto que las mujeres reaccionaron y le dijeron a Vic que era inconcebible que nos hubieran dicho a las mujeres que para ser buenas liderando tenemos que aprender a pensar como hombres. Y Vic, por supuesto que se retractó, se disculpó, dijo que nunca más iba a volver a publicar algo de semejantes características, que no sabían cómo había podido suceder semejante cosa, pero lo cierto es que Vic tiene todo un equipo de marketing, todo un equipo de comunicación, y a ningún hombre, pero tampoco a ninguna mujer de ese equipo, se les ocurrió pensar, quizás no sea una buena idea decirles a las mujeres para el Día de la Mujer que el camino exitoso al liderazgo es pensar como varones, ¿no? Así de arraigados tenemos los sesgos y los estereotipos. O por ejemplo, no sé si alguna vez prestaron atención a la cantidad de publicidades que nos rodean, aún de primeras marcas, en las cuales las mujeres somos cuerpos sin cabeza. Y la verdad es que las habilidades de liderazgo están asociadas con la cabeza, con la capacidad de pensar, de diseñar estrategia, de planificar, de distribuir recursos, de comunicar, todas habilidades mentales, ¿no? Sin embargo, muchas veces las mujeres somos representadas como que fuéramos meros cuerpos sin cabeza. En la publicidad actual, estos son datos del año 2020, solamente el 6% de la publicidad muestra a mujeres ejerciendo algún tipo de rol de autoridad. El 3% de la publicidad en el mundo retrata a las mujeres ocupando posiciones de liderazgo y apenas el 2% las retrata realizando algún tipo de tarea que requiera inteligencia. En las noticias no es tan diferente tampoco, a pesar de que en toda América, desde Canadá hasta Argentina, el 70% de las personas que se están graduando de las universidades son mujeres. Aún hoy en día, cuando los periodistas necesitan consultar una fuente experta para producir una noticia, más de 7 de cada 10 veces, más del 70% de las veces, consultan hombres y no a mujeres expertas. Tal como lo describe su vestimenta, déjenme presentarles a Yelena Serova. Yelena Serova es astronauta, es la 4ª mujer rusa en ir al espacio, la primera mujer rusa en ir a la Estación Espacial Internacional, estudió 2 carreras universitarias, estudió ingeniería espacial y dedicó 8 años enteros de su vida a entrenar para ir al espacio. Cuando llegó a la conferencia de prensa para el lanzamiento de la misión espacial, uno de los periodistas le preguntó a Yelena Serova si pensaba llevar maquillaje al espacio. A una mujer que estuvo entrenando 8 años y que hubiera tenido cosas interesantísimas para contar, la pregunta que le hicieron fue si pensaba llevar maquillaje al espacio. O por ejemplo, esto es del año 2019, en el año 2019 el Premio Nobel de Economía lo ganó un matrimonio, y vemos ahí en un artículo periodístico que nos dicen que el profesor indioamericano del MIT, Abhijit Banerjee, y su esposa ganaron el Premio Nobel, ¿no? O sea, él tiene nombre, tiene apellido, sabemos dónde trabaja, sabemos que es profesor, ella es la esposa. Menos mal que luego la BBC se encargó de decirnos que esta señora se llama Esther Duflo, que es la 2ª mujer que gana el Premio Nobel de Economía y la más joven de toda la historia. En otras palabras, los estereotipos y sesgos de género gozan de muy buena salud, y el problema que tenemos es que producen efectos negativos para las mujeres en las organizaciones. ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias negativas de vivir con sesgos y estereotipos? Bueno, básicamente que generan barreras transparentes, pero tremendamente resistentes y efectivas, que impiden a las mujeres crecer hacia las posiciones de liderazgo. Generan techos de cristal, paredes de cristal, laberintos de cristal y precipicios de cristal. Muy brevemente, para referirnos a estos conceptos, los techos de cristal son esas estructuras invisibles porque no hay nada que lo prohíba, pero en la práctica lo que sucede es que las mujeres llegan hasta los mandos medios de las organizaciones y no logran llegar al extremo, a las posiciones claves de liderazgo de las organizaciones. Esto sucede en todos los sitios. Solo el 30% de los puestos de investigación en el mundo están liderados por mujeres, solo el 20% del liderazgo en las industrias tecnológicas corresponde a mujeres, solamente 1 de cada 5 de los máximos ejecutivos de las empresas de los países del G7 son mujeres, y 75% de las personas que presiden directorios o compañías que cotizan en la bolsa europea son hombres. Es decir, fíjense los techos, como si nunca habían visto techos, acá les presento algunos porque son tremendamente claros. Pero los límites de cristal no se limitan, no son solamente techos, también hay paredes. A veces las mujeres nos capacitamos en áreas que nos interesan, pero terminamos siendo asignadas a áreas que están más asociadas con aquellas tareas que culturalmente se nos han asignado. Eso se ve muy claro en el caso de las ministras de gobierno. Si ustedes buscan el mapa de las mujeres políticas en el mundo, no solo van a ver que hay pocas mujeres ocupando carteras ministeriales, eso sería el techo de cristal, sino que además están todas concentradas en unas pocas áreas. La mayoría de las mujeres en el mundo son ministras de salud, ministras de educación, ministras de niñez, discapacidad, bienestar social. Pocas mujeres, en cambio, ministras de defensa, ministras de economía, ministras de ciencia y tecnología, porque normalmente las convocan para que se hagan cargo de áreas que enlazan con los tradicionales sesgos y estereotipos que se tienen acerca de las mujeres. También, por supuesto, para las mujeres hay laberintos de cristal, porque un hombre y una mujer que ingresan a una organización, para llegar a una posición de liderazgo, las mujeres van a tener que hacer recorridos mucho más complicados, que les van a insumir mucho más tiempo, y además van a tener que rendir una y otra vez pruebas de que están aptas para liderar. Y por supuesto también, bueno, a mí esto me gusta ejemplificarlo con el ratón Mickey y Minnie, porque no sé si sabían, pero ambos debutaron en la pantalla al mismo tiempo. En el año 1928 hicieron su debut cinematográfico. Minnie protagonizó ella sola más de 70 películas, y sin embargo le tomó 40 años más que a Mickey conseguir su estrella en el Paseo de la Fama de Hollywood. O sea que ella atravesó un laberinto de cristal. Y finalmente, por supuesto, también hay precipicios de cristal, que lo que significa es que a veces las organizaciones les ofrecen a las mujeres las posiciones de liderazgo cuando están en momentos críticos, terminales o al borde del fracaso. Entonces, el hecho es que el acceder a esa posición de liderazgo desde el día 1 conlleva para la mujer que lidera elevadas posibilidades de fracaso. Pero el tema es que cuando la mujer fracasa, no se culpa a que la situación era crítica, se culpa a que las mujeres no somos aptas para liderar. Estos obstáculos, estereotipos y sesgos no solamente son externos, a veces las mujeres, porque hemos sido socializadas en esta cultura, porque somos parte de esta sociedad, internalizamos esos sesgos y construimos barreras psicológicas, barreras que también se suman a los obstáculos externos y nos impiden avanzar en la construcción de nuestros liderazgos. La verdad es que esta idea me empezó a germinar a partir de trabajar con muchas mujeres líderes a las que asesoro, y empecé a ver que había ciertas pautas que se repetían con todas ellas, y entonces identifiqué 7 síndromes que nos afectan a la mayoría de las mujeres. Uno lo conocen, seguramente no es de mi invención, es el síndrome de la impostora, pero los otros 6 síndromes son síndromes que tipifiqué a partir de mi trabajo cotidiano con las mujeres y les quería compartir. Al primer síndrome lo denomino el síndrome de la chica inmaterial, que se relaciona con esto que nos han inculcado desde pequeñas, de que a las mujeres buenas no les interesa el dinero, que las mujeres somos generosas y no estamos esperando lograr cosas para nosotras mismas. Los síntomas característicos del síndrome de la chica inmaterial son a veces no saber ponerle precio a nuestro trabajo, avergonzarnos por ponerle un precio a nuestro trabajo, aceptar hacer ese trabajo por menos dinero del que realmente vale, tener temor de hablar de cuestiones operativas relacionadas con el dinero a percibir, sentirnos tan agradecidas porque nos ofrecen una posición de liderazgo que no negociamos ni dinero, ni utilidades, ni condiciones, por el temor de que piensen que soy codiciosa. Uy, no, pero si pido más dinero o si pido mejores condiciones van a pensar, bueno, le estamos ofreciendo la posición de liderazgo y quiere más cosas, ¿no? Fíjense que el 42% de los hombres negocia condiciones desde su primer puesto de trabajo y que solamente el 7% de las mujeres lo hace. Es decir, ahí tenemos algo que nos afecta a nosotras y que tiene que ver con haber internalizado estereotipos. Un segundo síndrome que pude identificar es lo que llamo el síndrome de la número 2, que es esta idea que tenemos las mujeres de que a veces somos nosotras mismas las que nos autoexcluimos o postergamos acceder al liderazgo porque sentimos que eso nos va a restar tiempo con nuestros hijos y vamos a ser malas madres, o que vamos a ser malas esposas, o que si lo aceptamos y dejamos atrás un colega varón, estamos siendo malas compañeras de trabajo, ¿no? Hace poco tiempo hablaba con una mujer en Holanda, ella es política, es la vicepresidenta de su partido político, y me dijo, yo podría haber sido la presidenta, pero decidí no postularme para ese cargo porque me di cuenta que iba a tener que hacer campaña los fines de semana y que eso iba a implicar prestarle menos atención a mi esposo y a mis hijos, entonces, bueno, acepté ser la número 2. Pero después me quedé pensando, mi esposo hizo campaña hace 2 años y mis hijos y yo lo acompañamos, y estoy segura que si le hubiera dicho a mi esposo que quería hacer esto, él me hubiera dicho, por supuesto que sí, te apoyamos. Sin embargo, fui yo misma la que me construí ese techo pensando que iba a ser mala madre o mala esposa si iba por mi carrera en vez de bajarme de eso. El síndrome de no estoy preparada aún, súper característico de todas las mujeres, que nos ofrezcan una posición y digamos, no sé, lo tengo que pensar porque creo que me falta, porque todavía no estoy preparada, ahora no, quizás más adelante. El problema es que cuando hacemos esto quizás más adelante, nunca nos ofrezcan o nos vuelvan a ofrecer esa oportunidad. Cuarto síndrome, el síndrome de la tomadora de notas. Muchas veces cuando estamos en las reuniones tenemos el impulso, o nos lo piden nuestros colegas varones, de que seamos quienes tomamos nota, quienes hacemos el briefing, y la verdad es que aunque las mujeres somos multitarea, los estudios nos muestran que cuando estamos haciendo multitareas no realizamos todas las tareas con el mismo nivel de eficiencia. Por lo tanto, el problema con esto es que cuando escribimos hablamos menos, y nuestra voz y nuestras opiniones se escuchan menos. Por lo tanto, no deberíamos ser siempre las personas que tomamos nota o llevamos el memo o el briefing de la reunión, porque eso hace que nuestra voz se escuche menos. Quinto síndrome, lo preparo yo, lo presenta él. Súper característico. Son mujeres trabajando, haciendo el trabajo duro, poniendo todo sobre papel, preparando la presentación y que después me dicen, no, mejor que a la reunión vaya él, que me nombre, pero que vaya él, o lo preparamos juntos, pero lo presenta él. No voy a ir a la reunión, voy a dejar que él lo presente para que no sienta que estoy compitiendo, para que no se sienta amenazado, ¿no? Hace poco tuve una clienta que vino y me dijo, ay, necesito que me ayudes a preparar una presentación con la que me tengo que lucir. Le dije, genial, vamos a eso, contame el contexto. Me dijo, bueno, somos dos, mi compañero de trabajo y yo la voy a preparar y él la va a presentar. Entonces mi comentario fue, es decir, vos me vas a pagar a mí para algo que va a presentar él. ¿No te parece que sería bueno que revisáramos primero por qué tenés este síndrome y por qué no pueden presentarlo en todo caso juntos, ¿no? Este es el más conocido, que no es de mi autoría, el síndrome de la impostora, que es básicamente que cuando las mujeres recibimos un ascenso, un premio, una promoción, un reconocimiento, lo atribuimos a que tuvimos suerte, a que nos ayudaron otras personas, pensamos que no nos lo merecíamos realmente. Los hombres suelen atribuir sus éxitos a sus propias capacidades y atributos, las mujeres normalmente a la ayuda que hemos recibido. ¿Por qué lo vivimos tan diferente el síndrome de la impostora a las mujeres? Básicamente porque las mujeres hemos sido socializadas para aspirar a la perfección, los varones son socializados en la cultura del ensayo y del error, de que bueno, si se equivocó ya va a aprender, porque así se aprende, mientras que de las mujeres se espera esta cruel autoexigencia de que lo hagamos bien de la primera vez. Esto tiene consecuencias reales, porque los hombres se postulan para un trabajo si cumplen alrededor del 60% de los requisitos que están en el job description, mientras que las mujeres no nos presentamos si no reunimos el 100%, ¿no? Hay una experiencia de una escuela donde los niños aprenden a codificar videojuegos, en la que asisten niños de entre 11 y 14 años, y la directora de la escuela decía que cuando los varones se traban y no logran armar un código, le golpean la puerta y le dicen, hay algo mal en el código que diseñó. Las niñas le golpean la puerta para decirle, me voy a ir porque hay algo malo en mí, no sirvo para esto, ¿no? Es como es que si no lo pueden hacer de la primera vez, entonces renuncian a la tarea porque sienten que han fracasado. Tenemos que empezar a incorporar entonces que lo normal es el aprendizaje por ensayo y error, soltar la idea de ser perfectas, porque además, si no lo hacemos, esto se convierte en un obstáculo cuando tenemos que liderar equipos, porque no delegamos, o porque delegamos pero estamos obsesivamente viendo si las personas cumplieron las tareas porque tenemos miedo de que la tarea no salga perfecta. Y el último síndrome es el síndrome de la ambiciosa, porque hemos aprendido desde la temprana infancia que la ambición es algo positivo en los varones. Cuando se dice que un hombre es ambicioso, normalmente se dice que es alguien que quiere crecer, que quiere progresar, que quiere construirse un lugar en la vida, pero cuando se dice que una mujer es ambiciosa, normalmente tiene una connotación negativa. Entonces, esto lleva a que muchas veces las mujeres tengan una modestia excesiva, que tengamos pudor de mostrar y dar a conocer nuestros logros, o que no tomemos crédito por las cosas que hicimos o los procesos que hemos liderado. Esto tiene consecuencias, hace que no llamemos la atención, que queramos pasar bajo radar, que desvaloricemos nuestros logros, y creo que hay una forma muy simple de contárselos, que es un test que a mí me gusta mucho, que consiste en una única pregunta. Este test se le realiza a hombres líderes y a mujeres, y consiste en una única pregunta que es, si pudieras tener un único superpoder, ¿qué superpoder elegirías? Los varones mayoritariamente responden el poder de volar. Yo quisiera poder volar. Las mujeres también responden que quisieran poder volar, pero en la misma proporción, las mujeres decimos, me encantaría tener el superpoder de ser invisible. Fíjense qué curioso. Las mujeres somos invisibles en las organizaciones y si quisiéramos ejercer un superpoder, volvemos a elegir la invisibilidad, ¿no? Y tiene que ver con esto de, ay, quiero pasar desapercibida, no quiero pecar de ambiciosa. Entonces, no debemos permitir que esos estereotipos se conviertan en creencias autolimitantes. Tenemos que revisar qué cosas pensamos acerca de nosotras mismas, con qué prejuicios nos estamos enfrentando, que muchas veces somos nosotras las que los ponemos sobre nosotras mismas. Les quiero dejar entonces, para pensar en cómo fortalecer habilidades de liderazgo, 5 herramientas de autoconocimiento y de planificación que nos ayudan a fortalecer el liderazgo. La primera herramienta es la más simple de todas y es descríbanse. Piensen, ¿cuáles serían 3 atributos que yo usaría para describirme y para describirme como líder? Y luego piensen, ¿será eso lo mismo que los demás piensan de mí? Es más, si tienen la oportunidad de contactar a alguna persona que haya trabajado con ustedes o alguien que las conozca mucho o que trabaje con ustedes actualmente para preguntarle, ¿me dirías con qué 3 palabras definirías mi estilo de liderazgo? Ahí van a ver si hay un match, si hay una coincidencia entre lo que ustedes usarían para autodescribirse y lo que están proyectando y lo que las demás personas perciben de ustedes. Segunda herramienta, hay que conocerse. Piensen, si yo quiero crecer y fortalecer mi liderazgo, ¿cuál es mi valor agregado? ¿Qué es lo que me hace diferente? ¿Cuáles son las fortalezas que yo tengo? ¿En qué soy realmente buena? ¿Y cómo puedo hacer para mostrarlo, para comunicarlo? Para que los demás sepan que yo tengo este valor agregado y esta fortaleza. Tercera herramienta, planifiquen. Por favor, planifiquen. Pregúntense, ¿dónde me gustaría estar en el mediano plazo? Dentro de 3 o 5 años, ¿dónde quisiera estar? Y escriban en un cuadernito 3 objetivos y para cada uno de esos objetivos 3 acciones muy concretas que puedan comenzar a realizar desde ahora para aproximarse a esos objetivos. Un método que pueden usar para hacer eso se llama método SMART y es un acrónimo. La S es por specific, específico, no elijan grandes abstracciones, elijan algo concreto. La M es por medible, tienen que utilizar indicadores de progreso para ir midiendo si se están acercando o no al objetivo que se propusieron. La A es de asignable, bueno, en este caso serían nosotras mismas las que tenemos que cumplir la tarea, porque no es un tema de equipo, somos nosotras. Tiene que ser realista, es decir, no plantear algo utópico, sino algo concreto, y también el tiempo. Tenemos que saber más o menos cuál es el plazo que nos hemos fijado o puesto para cumplir este objetivo. La cuarta herramienta es midan periódicamente sus logros. Creen sus propios indicadores de éxito, no usen indicadores de éxito de otros. Piensen, ¿qué es para mí el éxito? Alguna dirá, bueno, para mí es ser CEO en una organización. Y otra dirá, para mí es construir un equipo fuerte. Y otra dirá, para mí es tener la oportunidad de trabajar en una casa con vista al mar. Cada una sabe qué es un éxito personal, profesional o político que quiera lograr. Bueno, pónganse ese parámetro de éxito y midan su avance y sus logros en relación a eso. Y una última y quinta herramienta es, por favor, no se olviden del networking. Tanto en el nivel personal, es decir, reunirse con compañeras de estudio, de trabajos anteriores, de actividades de todo tipo, como las clases de yoga, porque vienen de distintos mundos y rompen la endogamia de que siempre estemos hablando con personas que se parecen a nosotras. También, por supuesto, cuidar el networking operativo con nuestros equipos para que el trabajo del día a día fluya. Y finalmente el networking estratégico, que es muy importante, porque es el networking con nuestros pares y con los altos directivos, que es lo que necesitamos para obtener sponsoring, para poder romper los techos de cristal y ganar visibilidad en la organización. Finalmente, para dar paso a las preguntas y a los comentarios que ustedes tengan, simplemente quiero hacer 6 recomendaciones que me parece que nos pueden ayudar a pensar mejor nuestros liderazgos. Primera recomendación, si les ofrecen un lugar, acepten. Cuando les ofrecen un lugar, no digan, ay, no estoy preparada, no sé si puedo. Venzan el miedo, salgan de la zona de confort, confíen en que van a aprender en el camino y en que no van a estar solas y va a haber gente que las va a ayudar. Porque si ustedes dicen, lo voy a pensar, cuando lo pensaron, ese lugar ya no está más. Y muy probablemente se lo dieron a un varón que está menos capacitada que ustedes. Entonces, por favor, si les ofrecen una posición de liderazgo, acéptenla, que seguramente lo van a hacer muy bien y van a aprender en el camino lo que aún no sepan. Segundo, digan en voz alta lo que quieren, pidan en voz alta lo que quieren, porque si no le están dando la excusa a los demás para que no les den esa posición de liderazgo. Si ustedes no dicen, no manifiestan en voz alta, yo quiero este lugar, a mí me interesa este lugar, lo que les van a decir es, bueno, no te lo dimos porque no sabíamos que te interesaba. Entonces, no den la posibilidad de que exista esa excusa. Pidan en voz alta lo que quieren. Tercera recomendación, hagan todo lo posible por sentarse en las mesas y en los equipos donde se toman las decisiones y no solamente estén sentadas, sino que también traten de hablar aunque sea una vez, de participar aunque sea una vez. Como decía la primera congresista afrodescendiente de los Estados Unidos, y si no les dan una silla, llévense una sillita plegable. Intenten por todas las maneras posibles que alguien les abra una puerta y puedan estar en los espacios de toma de decisión. Cuarta recomendación, hay que aprender a poner límites y a decir que no, a no complacer a todos todo el tiempo. En las organizaciones, sobre todo que tienen estructuras disciplinarias y jerárquicas muy establecidas, como por ejemplo las organizaciones militares, esto es particularmente difícil. Aprender a elegir los proyectos en los que queremos estar y a cómo decir que no en los cuales no queremos estar, pero ahí es donde las mujeres tenemos que desarrollar herramientas de negociación. Yo eso lo trabajo todo el tiempo con las mujeres líderes en todo tipo de organizaciones, pero en particular en estas organizaciones donde hay estructuras de disciplina muy jerárquicas y establecidas, tenemos que aprender a negociar. Quizás decir, bueno, yo quisiera poner mi energía en esto otro que estaba haciendo que me gusta más, pero por supuesto que puedo preparar y capacitar a alguien para que haga esta tarea, o me gustaría seguir haciendo lo que estaba haciendo, pero puedo supervisar a la persona que haga esta tarea. Es decir, si nos encontramos con personas que están dispuestas a escucharnos, podemos no decir no frontalmente, pero sí negociar condiciones que nos permitan no tener que terminar haciendo un trabajo que no queremos hacer. Quinta recomendación, las mujeres tenemos que aprender a comunicar y visibilizar nuestros logros. No podemos esperar a que los demás los detecten por sí solos. Tenemos que poder hacer visibles nuestros logros y aprender a tocar nuestra propia, a soplar nuestra propia corneta, a tocar nuestro propio tambor, o como me dijo hace poco una mujer muy inteligente en Costa Rica, las mujeres tenemos que aprender a cacarear nuestros logros. También tenemos que perder el miedo de decir, hice esto y me fue bien, lideré esta tarea y fue muy buena experiencia, etc. Y última recomendación, no se sientan en el ave exótica. Si logran romper los techos, si logran llegar a altas posiciones o a altos perfiles, sumen a más mujeres a los equipos. No solamente porque es lo correcto, sino porque la mayoría de las mujeres líderes con las que trabajo dicen que por las estructuras que tienen las organizaciones siguen siendo lugares muy masculinos, siguen siendo las organizaciones viejos clubes de hombres, y que el poder en las organizaciones es un lugar muy solitario para las mujeres. Y un fabuloso antídoto para sentirse menos solas en el poder es sumar a otras mujeres en el equipo. Así que las invito a ponerse manos a la obra. Les agradezco muchísimo que me hayan acompañado en esta primera parte de la presentación. Voy a dejar de compartir la presentación para escucharlas a ustedes, porque tenemos 5 minutos para escuchar lo que pensaron, lo que sintieron, o cualquier duda o pregunta o consulta que me quieran hacer de esta presentación. Muchas gracias. No sé, Daniela, cómo moderamos el espacio, si vas a ir dándole la palabra a las participantes o cómo nos vamos a organizar.
Si quieres, yo les doy la palabra, pero ahorita no hay nadie que haya alzado la mano aún.
Ok, perfecto. Perfecto. Si tienen dudas, comentarios, algo que haya surgido, que hayan relacionado con alguna experiencia propia que hayan tenido en la organización, son bienvenidas a compartir.
Good day, Miss. I would like to speak if no one is up to.
Okay. Welcome. You're welcome to.
Hi. Good day, Miss. Good day, all. I am Lieutenant Valene Valentine of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. I'm currently one of the captains under training in one of our squadron vessels, TTS Caliway. I just wanted to give some input in terms of women being in a leadership role. So from my experience and what I know is that I could have really identified when you said to close your eyes and picture your leader. And I guess really in everyone's mind, the first thing that would resonate would really be a male. And I just made some notes here in terms of what I would like to say is that from birth, we have been socialized through culture into thinking that a leader is really, you have that male representation, that male figurehead. And what I really think that we need, especially in terms of the Caribbean, is a culture shift. We need to change that paradigm totally. And it starts, of course, we need the support of the males, but it starts with us females also empowering ourselves and showing the males that we can lead. So, for example, women in the workplace, we are capable, we are competent, we are experienced, and we are knowledgeable. So we are the best fit for the job. And we need to also believe in ourselves that we can do it. Right? And I think that that is where the first process begins, that we need to believe that we can do it. Right? We need to, yes, we are human. We will make mistakes along the way. However, you know, making mistakes, those are experiences, the best teacher, and no one gets it right the first time. However, I believe that through practice and through experience, we learn and we get better, and this knowledge can then be imparted onto other females so that our experiences would then be shared so that they would learn and they can themselves become better leaders. So what I believe that women would bring to the leadership forum is, for instance, we think out of the box. So we bring a dynamic thinking towards it, right? We don't need to be aggressive as males. Sometimes things require what we call the feminine touch. So we bring our different leadership styles. And you know what? It works perfectly. We can do things in a very subtle manner and get things, you know, they always say a woman knows she gets what she wants. Yes, and that's through different ways and different means. So we can. Right? In the world, we are seeing there right now, currently, there are a lot of female leaders, even in the country that I am in Trinidad and Tobago. My president, we have our first female president. So we are seeing that we are making strides. And I really believe that through the continued change in terms of the shift of the thinking and the culture, and through support, that we can even shatter more glass ceilings and set new standards for other women that are coming. But I believe that what we also need to do, a part of it to achieve that, is that we need to highlight, right, the roles of women in leadership positions so that we would then empower others to want to be like them. So showcase female role models, because what we don't do also is acknowledge the roles that females play and the value that we add to the organization in achieving the success and the objectives of these organizations. So I think that we really need to show acknowledgement to women in these leadership positions so that the entire country and everyone would know, okay, women actually play a pivotal role within leadership to actually show that, yes, women are leaders too.
Of course, I thank you so much for this intervention, because I couldn't agree more with you in everything you said. I think we need role models. It's very hard to be what you can't see. So it's very important for little girls to see empowered women leading. I think that's key for that culture shift you mentioned we need. I think we have to socialize boys and girls in a very different way than we are doing now. Understand that there are no, that's the best thing that we could aim for in our organizations is diversity, because we have, when you have different mindsets and different ways of addressing things, surely the results would be much satisfying and much better than if everyone thinks alike. So I couldn't agree more with you that we have an important role to play, and that we have every time we can to make visible female leaders, women leaders, because I think that by example and by having role models, we can make this big culture shift we make. So thank you very much for your intervention.
Thank you very much for your pleasure, your attention.
And I see Doris Mcbride has asked for the floor. Doris, I can see you.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed your presentation, and it brought a few thoughts to mind. One of which is, I think that we as women have been brainwashed. You know, we say you have to see it to be it, but for most of us, the first leader that we ran across in our lives was another female. And we tend to forget that. And we also tend to buy into the male model of leadership, which is, you know, do as I say or what I say to do, when in reality, and it's a term I hate that people have started using called, what is it, servant leadership. I really detest that term because to me, it's an oxymoron, because if you are a leader, then that means you are a servant, because you are responsible for the people that you serve. And the fact that people feel the need to say both of those things together kind of gets away from what true leadership is to begin with. I mean, ultimately, if you are a leader, if there are things that need to be done that are unpleasant, or for want of a better way to put it, if your team needs to be protected so that they can fulfill their roles, that's the job of a leader. The other thought I had to do with note-taking, and I say this because I am a notoriously bad note-taker. I consider that an area that I have for improvement. However, the second part of that, I will never forget that a gentleman whom I worked for, whom I respected quite a bit, I remember saying something. I said, well, you know, I'm a bad note taker. And he said, that's okay. You don't have to take notes. But when time comes to write up the meeting, always take the first draft, because the person who does the first draft shapes the discussion, and everybody else winds up having to respond to that. So if an issue is important to you, you be the person that puts pen to paper and frames how the discussion goes.
Yeah, and that's a clever advice. That's very clever.
And then I guess just the last thing, in just talking about networking, I always think about what my grandmother said, and she said, respect everybody. And I have an antidote for that, because a shout out to our colleague who just spoke from Trinidad. I actually served in Trinidad a while ago. And when I was serving in Trinidad, one of the ambassadors who had been there prior to my arrival, he thought that the woman who was his housekeeper was a great judge of character. So when he was back in Washington and he was considering people for positions, if he knew they had served in Trinidad, he would always write her and ask her her opinion of them. And I found that very interesting, because a lot of times when people are thinking about networking, they're so busy thinking about networking with people who we think can do us good. That is, at people in higher levels or people at our own levels. So we network up and out, but we don't necessarily network down. And we forget that other people have knowledge and experiences. And sometimes they are not in higher positions because they haven't had the opportunity, or sometimes they're not there because that's not what they want to do. They chose, you know, what they did, but that doesn't mean that they don't have skills and knowledge that are useful. So I think that if you respect everybody, you'll be better off, as opposed to trying to pick and choose.
Of course, the more diverse is our network, the more we will get enriched, and we will learn, because you are absolutely right. We have we have the tendency to connect with people that are alike us, and the challenge is to connect with people that are diverse and that have different experiences and different knowledges, and not only networking looking up, but also networking looking around us. And I think that that's very, very, very valuable. So thank you very much, Doris, for your insights. And I think we have to go to the main room, because in 4 minutes, it's the last activity of this workshop. So I will meet you there very soon. I'm going to leave the room. Thank you very, very much to all of you for your participation and for your attention. And we'll meet in 5 minutes in the main room.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Virginia. I'm gonna share right now in the chat the link to the main room in case you were wondering what it is. And Virginia, before you leave, can we take a picture of the whole?
Of course.
That's okay with you?
Yes, of course.
Put their cameras on, please. That'll be great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just 1 second. I can. Here. Okay.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Let me take another one. Thank you. Let me take another one because we have 2 windows. Sorry. Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
Please feel free to join the plenary meeting. I shared the link in our chat. And thank you, Virginia, for such a wonderful roundtable discussion.
Thank you. See you.